I think that the biggest advantage that WWE has over AEW is not its history, it's not how iconic WWE is compared to AEW. It's not anything else other than this very thing. Any move in WWE means more than when it's applied in AEW. Any spot in WWE is way more valuable than it is in AEW. And what absolutely just insults my intelligence and how faithful I am to AEW and how I just keep cheering for them over and over again is that when Darby Allin does a very dangerous spot with the ladder, with whatever, Taz just chuckles. And now he got Excalibur doing the same thing. At the last Dynamite, there were a lot of ladders being used and a lot of scary spots. Excalibur just laughs it off. Each spot, they just don't take it that seriously. And then even Tony Schiavone, when anything huge happens, he reacts as if he's watching like a cartoon show, like, oh, something like that. He does not scream in a way that is remotely close to how JR reacted to Mankind's Hell in a Cell drop or spot. Nobody learned from JR and how he gets so invested in the moment. I do believe that Stone Cold Steve Austin, of course, had a lot of charisma, but I sincerely believe that a large portion of how people perceive Stone Cold Steve Austin as this insanely captivating anti-hero / anti-establishment criminal in a lot of, criminal in kayfabe, each and every time he gets the police involved and all of that. Nobody sold it as an announcer better than JR. I do sincerely believe if at that time Taz was announcing, he would laugh the whole time. And he would just make light of it all. Tony Schiavone would just, I just don't know how the NWO survived while Tony Schiavone is at the commentary desk. Tony Schiavone he's iconic with his voice that just makes you feel like you're watching a sport event. That's Tony Schiavone's voice. However, his performance isn't that good. I mean, my dream, let's say, broadcast team is Ian Riccaboni, the absolute perfection of what a wrestling announcer should be. Ian Riccaboni. Sorry, I'm butchering his name, but he's the absolute perfection or personification of what a model announcer is. Everyone should learn from him, not the other way around. And he is extremely humble. He is your stereotypical babyface announcer who's just doing his job, being nice, and when he finishes his broadcast, he just say every time, "Happy wrestling." He's just so gentle and positive. So when badass wrestlers come and bully him, it just works. But when you're a badass announcer and you keep making fun of the wrestlers, of the athletes performing, then you're a character that just wants more attention. I mean, seriously, listen at how Taz called Danhausen's matches. Listen to how Taz called Dalton Castle's amazing performance against Chris Jericho. I mean, his moveset is absolutely impeccable. He just works in every angle perfectly. I mean, Dalton Castle, I just don't know why WWE didn't pick him up. However, his suplexes, his whole, gimmick, he's it. Taz destroys and buries Dalton Castle with each and every move that he performs, with every suplex, with everything he does. AEW don't care that much about what happens inside the ring. They just do not care. The only two commentators who you may believe that they actually give a, let's say, damn about what happens inside the ring is Ian Riccaboni at first, then Excalibur. Excalibur, I get his situation. Taz just keeps dragging him down. I mean, the whole show, Taz is just picking on Tony, and when Tony is absent, he just goes at Excalibur again. I mean, it's just so draining. Taz is hilarious. Don't get me wrong. Taz, even though that I hate his commentary, he's hilarious. I mean, really, sometimes he just cracks me up. Even when I'm frowning watching the show, listening to his bad commentary, he just cracks me up sometimes, He's perfect as a podcaster. He's perfect on YouTube shows. And I'm not saying that in a way that I'm disrespecting him, but I mean, come on. Is solely because he just doesn't give a, and that's it. He really doesn't. I mean, look at the last pay-per-view when Darby fell from that giant ladder, and I just gasped. I felt like, oh my God, he broke his ankle, or maybe he's dead. The fall was completely scary. And I watched every Darby Allin match there is. But that spot was absolutely horrifying. The whole way down from the ladder, Taz was laughing. After the spot, Taz was laughing and laughing, and every other commentator was just silent, and then he just said sorry, and then he kept on laughing. Like, that overweight student who just chuckles at the corner of your classroom and nobody cares about what the hell he's laughing at, because every time he just keeps on laughing whenever anything happens at the class. He's just that, you know. So Taz was absolutely phenomenal at ECW, not just as a wrestler, but in terms of every story that he was involved in. And I can see that being crystallized with his son. I mean, it's just so smooth and sharp the way that they are handling Hook's whole career. So that's awesome. But other than that, he should never be on Dynamite. No Rampage. He should only be on Dark and Elevation. Period. That's it. Other than that, he just helps the talent, in the back, and that's it. I mean, Anna Jay broke her rib, bruised herself up, she got seriously hurt. While that horrible spot was being performed by that hippo, nobody gave a damn. They weren't just like, oh, it's just, you're walking in the park and you just watched a duck fart. You just go like, oh, like it's just something that is kind of interesting, but, it's just, oh. No, I want a commentator who would just go absolutely insane. He would shout, and people in the whole building would listen without a mic. That level of intensity that we miss. And, I mean, look at McAfee. Could you imagine him in AEW? So AEW have a lot of amazing wrestling. Don't get me wrong on that. However, they just do not care. And I'm just extremely sad for the passing of the late great Don West. And I honestly and sincerely believe Don West's energy and charisma picked TNA up with Mike Tenay, whom is a genius. They picked TNA up on their shoulders. I mean, their commentating skills, and they just grab your attention. They made everyone in TNA look like an anime character who would do supernatural things. I mean, AJ Styles was in ROH. Samoa Joe was in ROH. Look at ROH's commentary at that time, how they handled all the talent that ended up in TNA. And just compare the two of them. Just compare how they handled them. I mean, Don West would make you be completely entertained in even the slowest of matches. He would just sell every bit of it. Could you imagine Don West, Ian Riccaboni, with Joey Styles in AEW? It would be insane. But for me, if I was Tony Khan, I would seriously consider trying to convince Joey Styles to come back to wrestling and to just be there at the Dynamite each and every week with Ian Riccaboni and Excalibur. And you would see people would care more about what the wrestlers are performing and how they are risking their lives day in and day out. And by lives, I don't mean that they would or might die from it, but their whole life could change forever in an instant. I mean, look at how many wrestlers who ended up in wheelchairs for the rest of their lives. It's a dangerous business. We don't need Taz making jokes all the time and just bickering with Tony Schiavone. I mean, it worked for Tony Schiavone with Bobby the Brain Heenan. They were fantastic together. But come on, it's Bobby the Brain Heenan. Taz's energy is a fighter from Brooklyn. He just smashes people and runs through them. He doesn't have that, let's say, room, in any conversation with him that may make him lose the conversation. He just destroys people. That's awesome for him as a wrestler or as a heel manager. He would be absolutely fantastic. And I think it's just such an idiot move that they did at AEW. Probably he himself did it to just kill Team Taz. I mean, they built mercenaries. Everyone from Team Taz got to be so successful. And it shows. And you may say that, yeah, but at the end of the day, it's their own, willpower, or it's they did all the work. But to be a rookie and be under Team Taz's banner, and you're this whole, badass team that would just dominate the roster at Dark, at Elevation, at First, it just lifts you up, unlike the Factory, with all due respect to QT Marshall, whom is absolutely fantastic, the very best heel at AEW, and I'm absolutely responsible for what I'm saying. He is the most efficient heel there is. Better even than Christian Cage, because sometimes you feel like Christian Cage is just pushing the envelope. But with QT Marshall, he does it so naturally that you love to hate at him. You just love to boo him. And he's such a classic heel. Even though that he's not on television that often, but you feel just he's so familiar. He's absolutely amazing. But the whole Factory BS, it's just so dumb. And it just keeps on dying. But Team Taz didn't have to die. I mean, Team Taz should have included like new upcoming talents, like Konosuke Takeshita, Action Bronson. Could you imagine the chemistry that we missed if it's Taz arguing with Chris Jericho the whole way, and he's just proving that he is the better coach, in AEW? It just would be amazing. And I think that they really felt it was too crowded to have William Regal establishing his Blackpool Combat Club, his BCC. and to have Team Taz at the same time, at that ecosystem, or ecosystem. But I think that they made a terrible decision, and I do believe that Team Taz should come back. And Team Taz should function like how ECW functioned back in the day, when it just fed WWF and WCW all of these amazing talents. Team Taz has that ECW feel to them, and it's the only side of ECW that was prevalent in AEW. AEW sometimes feels like WWF's Attitude Era, and sometimes it feels like WCW Nitro, and sometimes it feels more like ECW with that hardcore crowd. Team Taz was functioning to serve that purpose, to give AEW some ECW feel to them. So it was just tragic to end it while Taz is around. And I think that they wanted to focus on Taz being at the commentary desk more often, and that's even more tragic, because he's such a bad commentator, even during his SmackDown days. I mean, I don't know what they were thinking. I do believe that they didn't have anybody whom that they felt was more efficient than Taz, and that's just sad, a lot of people who are better, way better than Taz. Booker T is way better than Taz at the commentary desk. Absolutely way better. And at the very end, I would just say that the best commentator that there ever was, and this might make some people mad, Vince McMahon was the best commentator that there ever was in the history of all professional wrestling. He was the best. First of all, he got the advantage of knowing everything, so he got that, and he had that, and I'm talking babyface Vince McMahon, by the way. He had that family show kind of announcer, of which that the way he spoke, the way he reacted to everything and to every joke being said by Jerry Lawler or Bobby the Brain Heenan or whomever, he would react like a teacher in a classroom, like, oh no, that's naughty. It's kind of that feel to him, and that's perfect to make anybody acting like a menace would just have more definition than when he's being talked to that way. If you're a very good, strict, even religious, dare I say, teacher, and you have this rude bully in the classroom making fun about the way that you talk, about the way you dress, that bully would be so well presented in that classroom, and he would be just so highlighted for how rude he is. For a wrestling show, this is gold. And Vince McMahon's whole demeanor and his whole, gimmick was the very best frame for every other gimmick in the whole show. And without Vince McMahon, WWE would never have been this successful. I mean, we all know the allegations. We all know that in real life, he is horrible. He's scary, he's real, and he's sometimes demented. I'm not saying that he was a good guy. Far from it. He was just monstrous. But during the 80s and early 90s, he was on that show, in kayfabe, he was just a saint, you can say. He was amazing. He made Bret Hart look like Ted Bundy. I'm not talking about the screw job. Way before it, Bret Hart had a lot of meltdowns, and he said tough shit, and he swore a lot. If people didn't check out the Attitude Era with Bret being in it, Bret was grumpy. Bret was very, let's say he was in a very dark place, and he was difficult to deal with. And in kayfabe, he was very, let's say, destructive with his mic skills. He destroyed everyone else. And with Vince McMahon being around him, he made you feel like Bret is Ted Bundy. However, if Ted was, if Bret Hart was in AEW at the same level he was performing during that days, he would look like a mid-carder, if not a dark talent. I mean, with MJF around, with all of them around. I mean, MJF, even though that I think he's overrated, MJF actually the only guy that the announcers care about. And they really sell how bully he is, or how insanely over the line he is. Even though that there are a lot of wrestlers who have done and said a lot worse than him. But he is a clear example of what happens when the announce desk care about a wrestler and sell what he is saying and doing. Right. I think I have said what I needed to say. And have a good night, people. Ciao and happy wrestling.